Hello, this is Dustin DaHusky again. I thought we'd talk about prices of new vehicles. Can't help but to notice that the cost of the average new vehicle in this country has been going up each year. Obviously, since forever, it's only natural that inflation, small amount of inflation, keeps creeping up and up and up and up. But it's only a bit normal. Although when you look back at the costs of old vehicles when they were brand new and you increase them to today's wages or cost of today, the inflation, it's about where new cars are being sold today. However, if we're going to be looking at an orange with an old rotten orange from 20 years ago, yes, you can certainly say the cost of cars these days have definitely gone up. And not just through inflation, but also to stagnant wages also doesn't help. That not only are you being outstripped in inflation for your buying power, but the lack of any bit of wage increase to follow currency inflation means that your own buying power for what you're being paid for is also becoming a bit more diminished little by little over time. So a $10,000 car back 25 years ago is going to maybe cost you $15,000 to $17,000 now. Although back then wages were quite competitive then, and companies were more than willing to give people wage increases at that point. So it doesn't seem so bad. Nowadays, and this is just the price increase on products across the board. Cell phones, laptops, cameras, appliances, TVs, houses, you name it, everything is going up in cost. But people's living wages each year are kind of becoming stagnant. They don't increase much in the last 20 years. In the last 10 years, it really hasn't gone up much at all. Although they say the average income has increased by $5,000 from 2010 to 2020, I really fail to see that actually being legitimate, where I know way too many people who aren't even getting paid more than 13 or 15 an hour. And the few that do are in quite a good industry or in quite a good job that are lucky enough to be in it now. And yes, that can also change where sometimes businesses go boom. Kind of like my own, where I don't get paid much, but my company has also ran out of money and got a loan. So the money is going somewhere where we don't even know where it's going. So, yeah, but not about that so much. Let's talk about cost of cars now. The average car, I forget, in the 1980s, the cost of an average car was about $12,000. So entry to middle of the road in terms of an optioned out car, and certainly maybe one that is compact or mid-size to maybe large size. So you're not talking about near levels of luxury, but you're still looking at a basic, down-to-earth, blue-collar car that you and the family can go on road trips to up north in Wasaki and also go to work at the factory and produce tractors for Alice Chalmers. There we go. In your 85 Citation 2 or or an 86 Toyota Corolla sedan, AE80. But these were cars that people could still afford even back then. At least the buying power of our dollar back then was still stronger. Now it's not so much. And it's a lot more harder to afford even a used car in this day and age, where now the average American has to maybe work a second job or sometimes do 2 part-times to make a full-time. Or I've even heard some people who have 3 part-time jobs just to make ends meet, which is nuts. Which also goes into why the average age of the American car has been increasing each year by a little amount. Back 10 years ago, it used to be 11 years old for an average car in the United States, which they thought that was ancient, but now it's getting closer to 13, 14. People are not in the mood to buy a new car, not as much as they used to. And with the pandemic, it's really starting to herniate dealerships that are trying to sell new cars, that the hottest commodity right now is the used car, where people would rather buy something used that they can still somewhat afford than something brand new that they obviously can't. And even if they could, they're still not certain about their own future, that if they could continue to afford said new car under a loan of maybe 3 to 5 to 7 years. And back in the 1980s, the average car loan was about 3 years at that point. And as each decade rolled by, more and more Americans are opting for longer periods for loans, which shows that they can't afford a 3-year car loan without it hurting them just by getting by. So, what does that exactly mean about the manufacturers? Manufacturers don't care. They know that the American consumer is dumb enough to buy any car that they produce off the line. You want to buy a $50,000 truck. You want to buy a 70. There are pickup trucks out there that you can buy for 80 grand right now. That's insane. For a pickup truck that will never enter a construction site and that will never get muddy. And yet, a Ford F-150 worth about 60 to 80 grand is now becoming the new Chevy Malibu in America suburbia. And I wish I could joke, but that's reality. And yet, people still go into deeper and deeper debt because even those who could afford an $80,000 truck still would never in their wildest dreams ever afford it outright. That's not the current America we're living in today, or at least at the time of this video in Halloween 2020, just days before the election. But the cost of American cars is only because that manufacturers don't care. They want to line their pockets with profit. They want to make their shareholders happy by lining their pockets with more money. And they're still going to be making the same old thing over and over and over again. Fully loaded cars with nearly every option you can think of at the far extreme cost of what they would go for. Give them to dealerships to sell and whack some more money on them to make their own money that way, because dealerships pay factories for a allotted assortment of vehicles to sell. Then they wax on whatever amount of money they think they can make on said vehicle. So an $80,000 pickup truck could be selling for $87,000. Because anything less than $7,000 profit may not be worth what the dealership is willing to keep on their lots. Because if you're only going to make $2,000 per vehicle, you're not going to stay in business for very long. But you also have to realize there's that possibility of risk that you could be buying a fleet of $80,000 luxury pickup trucks that may not sell, because now suddenly people gained a brain and said, hey, we should probably buy a smaller vehicle because we can't obviously afford a pickup truck, not including the fuel that it would take to get it from point A to point B, or between fill-ups. So the cost of the new car or truck or whatever is getting out of control. Americans are doing this themselves. We are our own worst enemy. Americans love to buy luxury. We've been doing that for the last 40, 50 years, where more and more Americans are choosing to either buy a luxury brand or tarting up any particular model with every option possible without considering cost, which, if you can afford it, by all means do it. But if you're not in the position to actually buy the car outright and you're going to put as much options on said car and still going to take a loan, you're putting yourself and your family, or you're just overall yourself, because it's going to be in your name, at risk. And banks have a business of repossessing people's cars. You can't afford to keep paying for your vehicle that costs way more than you could afford. You know what? Repossessions in the last 20 years are pretty common. Right now, even unfortunately during COVID times, people are not at work. They're not able to afford any car loan. It could even be a car they could afford, and they may not be able to pay for their monthly loan. But especially for those that bought an expensive vehicle, not at work anymore, and struggling to make ends meet just by unemployment, and that's not including mortgage of where they live, one has to really wonder, did you really need to buy the $80,000 pickup? And not only that, why put yourself so much in a hole in the first place? You could get basic transportation, and when I mean basic, you still have options than you ever had before back 20 years ago, where a basic car meant no options at all. Nowadays, all cars come standard with power windows and power locks with a CD player. And some even come with fog lamps as standard. So you really have to wonder, basic does not mean bare bones anymore. But if you're willing to put yourself in debt for something that you think would get you major bongo points, if you're a boss at work, to hire you more because you bought yourself a vehicle you can't afford, but thinking that you can go out of your means of what you're willing to pay to put yourself in an air of, oh, I am well-to-do. Your boss ain't going to give two shits, but he thinks that you're doing well, so he's just going to let you be, which actually doesn't give you more money that way. Telling your boss you have a family won't get you more money. Telling your boss that you're getting a house won't make you more money. Telling your boss that you bought a $100,000, I think it's a Nissan Titan that's worth that much money with a Cummins engine. Your boss will think you are doing well enough on your own that you don't need more money. Does the opposite effect. You really want to stick it to your boss, buy the most cheapest basic beater you can find, and that's enough to tell your boss you need more money. Is when you buy an 85 Nova with rot all around and every body panel is a different color. That's one way to tell your boss that, hey, I'm on rough waters. And this is the only automobile I can afford. I guess that might give you some brownie points. It's still not a guarantee. I don't know. Americans love luxury cars, or they love luxurious items in their cars. So they're willing to pay full cost for whatever it is, but they might bitch and they may even try to bargain, which if you're trying to bargain for a car that you want to buy but you can't afford, yeah, you can certainly haggle. But what is it telling you about what you can and can't afford? Does that mean that you should probably start where you would rather want to haggle and then even work down less? Thus, you're not spending much more money than you need to. The American automotive market in a nutshell. Americans are complacent that they will pay for whatever cost for a car that they can. I got my car for $6,000 less than what they were willing to sell. And I'm doing pretty good with my purchase, as it's what I'm able to afford. The car is worth less than what I make a year, but the average American tends to buy a vehicle that is worth double than what they're working in a year. Some of my friends who are doing incredibly well, they're driving 12-year-old cars, and they're not looking at buying another car anytime soon, and they're making more money than I can ever make in a lifetime. But they're living smart, which is rare. And they're the ones that could afford to make that $80,000 pickup truck mistake and still be able to get by without a problem. I don't know. The average cost of the average American car is going up so much that base models for cars are reaching near $20,000. And that's for a compact size car. And then anything smaller than that you can get for a lot less. And even still, it's getting to the point where so back in 2010, the cheapest car in America was the Hyundai Accent hatchback for less than $10,000. But you can buy a brand new car right off the lot for $10,000. It's not bad. Now the cheapest car you can buy in the United States is a Mitsubishi Mirage hatchback for $10,000 about. But now it's a smaller car. You are literally going from a compact car, actually a subcompact car, to a micro car. And something smaller than a micro car is a city car. I don't know. It's not good to be... It's perfect time to buy a used car right now. But when you're looking for a brand new one, you're getting a lot less and less and less for your money now. Gone are those days where for your dollar, you could purchase quite a lot. We're not living in those days, unfortunately, anymore. Where, I believe my dad's 89 Cavalier VL Stripper, base of the base model coupes. You only got one color, non-metallic gunmetal gray, and a partial vinyl interior with rubberized floor instead of carpeted floor, and no insulation, no radio, and I don't even think you get interior trunk carpeting. Literally bare basic bones. Cost him about less than 10 grand back in 1989. We have the original window sticker somewhere around here. I don't know. I think your best bet is just to buy a used car. And the trend today is more and more people are buying used cars than they are buying new ones. And that's just not because of COVID. Even before COVID struck earlier this year, more and more people still bought used cars. Because there's a switch in the trend that people just can't afford the prices of what a new car goes for these days. And often enough, they're accepting the fact that even a used car can be a good car. And all used cars are good cars. Dealership, you don't have to worry so much about. Private sale, you got to make sure that your vehicle's got all the rubber stamps, full up-to-date service log. But beyond that, even buying a newer used car from Craigslist is not a bad idea. Though the owner wants to definitely sell for what he wants to get for it, but you can still have room for haggling. You might still get a better deal on Craigslist, but if you're cheeky and you drive a hard bargain, you might be able to walk away with a used car from a dealership for a lot less than what they're given, and dealerships would rather get rid of their used cars as fast as they can. So who knows? Maybe you're better off looking for a used car that needs a new home. A new car would be fun. I don't think I want to spend $22,000 on bare bones car. And I don't think I'll ever be able to afford a brand new car anyway. So not so much an issue for me, and does not bother me one bit. I just think the prices on these new cars these days is getting insane. But the American public is driving this mentality to auto manufacturers that this is a norm and that they're okay with it. And the automotive manufacturers are going to say, hey, one day we could sell Toyota Camry for $30,000, $40,000 one day. That'd be insane. But I could see Americans would be complacent enough that they would do it without asking any questions. And it'd be a shame. What would that do for used car prices? Will they have their own little plateau like they have been in devalued cost? Or are they going to skyrocket in price as well over time, where the average used car that is maybe a few years old that may have been $18,000 could be $22,000. Who knows? Anything can happen. I don't know. Everything is becoming too expensive in this country, cars included. I just hope that people come to their senses and say, wait, do I really need to buy a $70,000 Silverado with all the bells and whistles when perhaps maybe a new Trailblazer or Blazer may just be the only thing I need? Smaller, less expensive, and you get the same amount. You get the same amount of options and gadgets that you could get from a truck. I don't know. I think it's more image driven. It's what your neighbors see. You don't care about so much yourself, but what your neighbors think. That's kind of toxic. That needs to die, if anything. If anything, that just needs to go away in this American culture. So, yeah, things are expensive. Doesn't bother me. I'll never be able to afford a new car, so that's something I don't have to really worry too much, but it's something I've noticed. So, anyway, you guys looking for a car, buy used. Actually might be a better deal than buying brand new. It's okay if it's got 20,000 miles on the clock. Hey, at least you're not paying $30,000 for a Honda Accord. I don't even know what they're going for top price today anyway, which is insane. What, 35,000? 40,000? I know the top price for an Accord in 2002 was 31,000. That's for a simple Accord. That's insane. So, be smart with your money. Only spend what you think you only need. And don't give a penny more. Later, guys.